Upon which the peasant glanced cautiously on all sides and shook his head. "I am afraid," said he, "that there is something not quite right about your pig. In the village I have just left one had actually been stolen from the bailiff's yard. I fear you have it in your hand. They have sent after the thief, and it would be a bad look for you if it was found upon you. The least that could happen would be to be thrown into a dark hole." Poor Hans grew pale with fright. "For heaven's sake," said he, "help me out of this scrape. I am a stranger in these parts. Take my pig and give me your goose." "It will be running some risk," answered the man, "but I will do it sooner than that you should come to grief." And so, taking the cord in his hand, he drove the pig quickly along a bypath, and lucky Hans went on his way home with the goose under his arm. "The more I think of it," said he to himself, "the better the bargain seems. First I get the roast goose, then the fat, that will last a whole year for bread and dripping, and lastly the beautiful white feathers, which I can stuff my pillow with. How comfortable I shall sleep upon it, and how pleased my mother will be." And when he reached the last village he saw a knife grinder with his barrow, and his wheel went whirring round, and he sang, "My scissors I grind, and my wheel I turn, and all good fellows my trade should learn, for all that I meet with just serves my turn." And Hans stood and looked at him, and at last he spoke to him and said, "You seem very well off, and merry with your grinding." "Yes," answered the knife grinder, "my handiwork pays very well. I call a man a good grinder who every time he puts his hand in his pocket finds money there. But where did you buy that fine goose?" "I did not buy it, but I exchanged it for my pig," said Hans. "And the pig?" "That I exchanged for a cow. And the cow? That I exchanged for a horse. And the horse? I gave for the horse a lump of gold as big as my head. And the gold? Oh, that was my wage for 7 years' service." "You seem to have fended for yourself very well," said the knife grinder. "Now, if you could but manage to have money in your pocket every time you put your hand in, your fortune is made." "How shall I manage that?" said Hans. "You must be a knife grinder like me," said the man. "All you want is a grindstone. The rest comes of itself. I have one here. To be sure, it is a little damaged, but I don't mind letting you have it in exchange for your goose. What say you?" "How can you ask?" answered Hans. "I shall be the luckiest fellow in the world, for if I find money whenever I put my hand in my pocket, there is nothing more left to want." And so he handed over the goose to the peddler and received the grindstone in exchange. "Now," said the knife grinder, taking up a heavy common stone that lay near him, "here is another proper sort of stone that will stand a good deal of wear, and that you can hammer out your old nails upon. Take it with you and carry it carefully." Hans lifted up the stone and carried it off with a contented mind. "I must have been born under a lucky star," cried he, while his eyes sparkled for joy. "I have only to wish for a thing and it is mine." After a while he began to feel rather tired, as indeed he had been on his legs since daybreak. He also began to feel rather hungry, as in the fullness of his joy at getting the cow he had eaten up all he had. At last he could scarcely go on at all, and had to make a halt every moment, for the stones weighed him down most unmercifully, and he could not help wishing that he did not feel obliged to drag them along. And on he went at a snail's pace, till he came to a well. Then he thought he would rest and take a drink of the fresh water. and he placed the stones carefully by his side at the edge of the well. Then he sat down, and as he stooped to drink, he happened to give the stones a little push, and they both fell into the water with a splash. And then Hans, having watched them disappear, jumped for joy and thanked his stars that he had been so lucky as to get rid of the stones that had weighed upon him so long without any effort of his own. "I really think," cried he, "I am the luckiest man under the sun." So on he went, void of care, until he reached his mother's house. Wow.